You're up.
Right now.
Okay. Ready?
How long is the show, Bart?
Hello, this is Freethought Forum, a program by the Atheist Society of Knoxville and the Rationalists of East Tennessee. I'm Faithless Forrest.
And I'm John Clark.
And I'm Joe Barnhart. Welcome.
And I'm Ralph Eisler.
And we want you to know that if you don't believe in God, you're not alone. Right here in East Tennessee, you can find free-thinking atheists and agnostics. This is a show for them and for people committed to a life rooted in science and free of supernatural belief.
On today's show, we're going to discuss secular invocations. But first, we want to tell you a little bit about the sponsors of our show. The Atheist Society of Knoxville frequently has a fun meetup at a bar or eatery. Tonight's meetup is at Barley's in the Old City. You look for the silver jacketed copy of The God Delusion standing upright on the table. And if you come by, just don't preach, proselytize, provoke, or punch, as Matt Dillahunty says on the Atheist Experience.
Okay. Well, the Rationalists of East Tennessee have several regular monthly meetings. First and third Sunday mornings are usually lively roundtable discussions and lectures. Second Sunday, we hold the Skeptics Book Club. And on the fourth Sunday, we mix it up a little bit. Sometimes with a get-together we call a reflections meeting. It features a potluck lunch, sometimes in somebody's home. Other times we play board games or similar activities. You're all welcome to join us.
Later in the show, we will give you our websites to visit for additional details, including times and locations. And we would also like you to come to our Facebook page. It's Freethought Forum on Facebook, where you can leave comments that we'll be able to answer right on the show.
Right, it's Freethought Forum Knoxville on Facebook. On Facebook, yeah.
Alrighty.
There's still time to get help with college costs. The Freedom from Religion Foundation's college essay contest gave away over $33,000 last year, and they again have essay contests this year.
There are three categories. The Brian Bolin Graduate or Older Student Essay Contest for students ages 25 to 30. The Michael Hakeem, I think that would be pronounced, Memorial College Essay Contest for college students under the age of 25. And finally, the William J. Schultz High School Essay Contest for college-bound high school seniors.
And essay winners receive from $200 to $3,000. If you want to learn more, go to your website, ffrf.org. That's the website. And navigate to the link called Outreach Events. And then Student Scholarships to find the essay contest requirements.
So essays must be postmarked by July 15th. So you have to hurry.
All right. Well, on today's program, we have a call-in interviewee. It is, I'm going to mangle his name, I'm guessing, yet again, Randy Word. And Randy, are you on the line with us?
Yes, and thanks for having me.
Okay, well, great. Randy, can you tell us where you're calling from?
I'm calling from Fort Worth, Texas, which is a part of the Metroplex Dallas-Fort Worth area.
All right, and you're part of a Freethought group there. Can you tell us about that?
I'm actually the current president of Metroplex Atheists. We're the oldest atheist organization in North Texas, and we focus on providing social gatherings, education, and church and state issues for non-believers in the area.
All right, well, so by church and state, you're referring to protecting the wall of separation thereof, right?
Absolutely.
And so can we get a slider, Randy, up here so that we can see who we're speaking to? Well, Randy...
That must be pretty.
Well, Randy, I read about you getting in the news because you guys are trying to have an invocation down in, is it pronounced Rowlett, Texas?
Rowlett.
Actually, Rowlett.
Rowlett.
That's the Texas pronunciation. You can call it Rowlett if you wish.
I'm from Minnesota. I may mangle that.
Well, as they say, the locals are always right. So you just say it the way the locals do it and you'll be fine.
There we go.
Okay, Rowlett.
So, you made it into some news. Can you tell us about what the history that led up to you getting in the news?
I'll try to make this brief. Back in 2010, a citizen of Rowlett that was a non-believer, we don't know who it was, complained to Freedom from Religion Foundation about the city council there opening their meetings with a secular Christian prayer. FFRF wrote a letter. It was never responded to, and the issue kind of went stalemated for a while. Then back in 2012, a couple of our members of Metroplex Atheists that are residents in Rowlett came to us complaining about the continuing sectarian Christian prayers opening the city council meetings. So we engaged FFRF again. They wrote a letter. Of course, it was never responded to. Metroplex Atheists got a group together to go support our fellow members in Rowlett and went in front of the city council and did a citizens' input expressing our opinion, and we actually were pushing for the doing away with invocations altogether, or worst case, doing a moment of silence. And of course, that fell on deaf ears. At about that time, the lawsuit was filed up in Greece, the Greece first Galloway lawsuit that just got decided by the Supreme Court back in May.
What state is that in?
Go ahead.
That's New York.
New York. Yeah.
Greece, New York, sorry.
Yeah.
In where the Supreme Court ruled in favor of allowing sectarian Christian prayers as long as they're done in a non-discriminatory way in regard to who gets to deliver those invocations. So we were on hold for about a year and a half waiting for that case to be decided. And after that happened, we went back to Rowlett requesting to get our member residents in Rowlett put on the invocation list to deliver a secular invocation. That's what we're pushing for now.
Let me ask for a clarification, Randy. Had you already requested and you were put on hold, or you decided not to request until the Galloway decision was made?
We decided not to request until the Galloway decision, which we were hoping would go the other way, but the makeup of the current Supreme Court, was otherwise even before the decision probably, and that's the way it went. So we put it on hold to await that decision to see what our strategy would be.
And so the mayor came back and he said he wasn't going to let non-Christians give the invocation. Is that what happened?
In the latest approach we've taken, they actually, FFRF wrote them a letter, then we wrote a letter requesting our two residents be put on the invocation list. And then we did a press release, which created publicity, which they blamed us for doing this just for the publicity. And I'm going to have to say yes, because if we didn't, you would have never responded to us, which they wouldn't. So it kind of put some pressure on them to force a response, which was a little convoluted to begin with. The attorney for the city said, well, we probably won't respond to the letter. The mayor says we're still going to continue to pray, which is a non-issue because that's what the Greece Galloway case supported. So they really didn't know what they were talking about. I think they're getting their act together a little better now because they're getting educated through the media on exactly what that Greece Galloway case really intends to address.
Yeah, that should work for us in a few ways. Have you already thought about that and how what your next action plan is?
Well, right now we're waiting for. In the letter we wrote requesting to have our people put on the invocation list, we gave them 10 business days to reply. That time frame isn't up until this Friday. Then we'll see what our next step is. They did discuss this in an executive session, or they're going to tonight. I don't know the details. But the invocation policy did make it on to their executive session agenda, which is the session that's pre-city council meeting. It was closed to the general public. So we're waiting to see. But at least by going with the publicity angle, we have now forced them to at least bring that invocation policy back into their discussion process. But we don't know what the response is going to be yet.
So they can't just blow it off right now or ignore it. They have to deal with it.
Yes, they have to. They're in a position where they have to deal with it because the Greece Galloway decision probably invalidated their current invocation policy, which was probably unconstitutional to begin with.
Right. We should probably take a minute to go over Greece Galloway. Forrest, did you do that show with me?
Yes.
Someone did. We'll just do it briefly. From what I recall, and help me out, Randy, if I miss anything, but they're upholding the prayer. But in that specific instance, you had to be part of a registrar of invokees or whatever. And that was an exclusive. It turned out to be an exclusive list
Very,
because
very
it was done
exclusive.
via the a telephone directory that was out of date, and then, of course, it's kind of an old boys club in a sense, because you just get word of mouth. Hey, we need these people to do a prayer or an invocation, and the ones who come that first year or first few months are the ones they pick for the next decade, it turns out. And does that sound about right?
That's about right. Now, if I have this right, and I know there's a lot of skeptics listening, so go check this out. I'm pretty sure that once the town of Greece, New York, was basically doing what you just described in formulating a policy that restricted the prayers to sectarian Christian prayers based on the way they did their selection process. But once the case was filed, between that time and when it went to the Supreme Court, they actually did allow some non-Christian prayer or invocation givers in, and even made a statement that they would even allow an atheist to do it.
Right.
And my opinion is by doing that is probably why they won, or one of the big reasons they won the case.
Right. I think you're right on that, and it's worth pointing out that I think it was Justice Kagan had sided slightly at odds with us, but I think Joe and I might like this. There is a history of invocation in this country, and if I'm not mistaken, Randy, that criterion for their invocation in your area is very, very, very influenced by the history. I mean, they mentioned over and over again, at least what I read through it. This has been they listed all the way back to I think the 1800s of court cases. However, they only mentioned the I can't remember which one Kagan mentioned for the New York case, but we're going to do an invocation no matter what, basically, and that we need to make this available for everyone else. And I think that's where it's going to work for us. I doubt we'll get it removed, but yeah.
Oddly enough, this was fought in this country and won by the church-state separation as under Thomas Jefferson and Benjamin Franklin.
Right.
And they were the ones, and the Baptists, by the way, supported Thomas Jefferson because they wanted church-state separation, because they had come from England, where they had a politicians supporting the Church of England, but not these others. In fact, John Milton, who was a Puritan, wrote a very strong article opposing what was, in a sense, Parliament and their domination of religion through the Church of England. And most of the Puritans came over here for the very purpose of getting religious liberty.
Right. Also, Kagan just noted she also was interested in, do these governments function locally? And if they function locally, we don't want to interfere. And now I can't support that with the cases she ported, but in Kagan's dissent in that Greece versus Galloway, you'll find her sources for that. That's where she's at odds with a lot of our free-thinking and atheist groups that we
and her view is what, specifically?
Well, that's
that the local government can dictate whatever prayer types they want to.
That's
a dictatorial government.
She tried to stay away from influencing prayer itself, but that's a bit of a paradox. And I don't think she can back out of that the way she wrote it.
No, she can't.
But anyways,
this is discussed in the Journal of Church and State, which is a very good journal discussing these issues.
We may have to do another show on that.
Yeah, this is just part of a bigger issue as to how much influence the federal government versus state or local governments can have over people. And I don't see this going away anytime soon. So far as issues, they'll keep coming up.
Well, I read part of the Greece-Galloway decision. I mostly concentrated on reading the majority opinion written by Justice Kennedy. And, in it, he says that, in a sense, the government has no business dictating the content of prayer. And there I would say, I'm with you, man. The problem is that what they do is they create a platform for prayer that is now out of control. And what is going to happen is local governments all over the nation are going to say, hey, we've got a blank slate, and they are gonna try and pick and choose the content of prayer by choosing who they allow to give the prayer.
Sure.
And
exactly.
So that's the can of worms.
Randy, what you may run into is that these guys will draw up a list of preachers for the next 3 years to give an invocation, and say, well, we'll put you on the waiting list.
Yeah, when the gavel hits, that's over. You got to fight to get back on there.
Yeah.
That was actually why I asked if Randy's group had already applied so that they were already in the queue, so to speak.
Yeah.
But
how's that going for you, Randy? You got anything?
well, no, they're waiting for the
still
reply
waiting.
on Friday.
Still waiting. Okay, yeah.
Yeah.
We're waiting, but if they did pull a ploy where they filled up the list for several years, that would be a basis for a lawsuit somewhere in the country, I'm sure, which would fly in the face of even the majority decision that I think Forrest was referring to
Yeah, I think
on discrimination.
a lot of these cases, they end up in court just because people act rash, at least the boards and whatnot, and it's cheaper for them just to listen to the public. So I'm thinking you're right. They're on the ball now, and they're going to start listening to you a little bit.
But it's in many ways it's redoing history.
Yeah.
In fact, the evidence shows that wherever you have government not involved in religions grow much better. They prosper much better without government interference. As soon as one reason I think religion perished or diminished so much in Europe is it was state controlled.
Yeah,
In this country, we've had church-state separation until people like Jerry Falwell and like that wanted to do away with the First Amendment.
We should probably remind the callers or the viewers that phone lines are down today and that you can contact us on the web and on our Facebook group, Freethought Forum Knoxville. Just search for that. It's an open group.
And you
post
can
a question there.
leave us comments there.
Yeah. All right.
Well, so Randy, you covered a little of the history of your group, but could you tell us something about the demographics of your group? And did your group mostly form to oppose this church-state entanglement, or do you have functions that are like social in nature, like our groups?
We were formed back around 91, if I'm not mistaken. I was not involved with the group at that time.
Yeah.
And at that time, back when American Atheists, I think Madeline Murray O'Hare may have still been alive then.
Yeah.
This was actually a chapter of that organization. I'm just giving you a history that I can recall being told.
Yeah.
Then we left that group for some reason and became just a local organization, although we are an affiliate of American Atheists. And we provide social settings, so we have meetups for just social gatherings. We participate in some parades. We have a solstice party every year, so we provide social settings for like-minded people in the Dallas-Fort Worth area. We do education within and outside the group. We've had Seth, the guy from Oklahoma, I can't remember his last name. He's got a podcast too. Anyway, we've had some speakers in to talk to our group. We've even had leaders of faith, like a Baha'i.
Oh, are you thinking of Seth from the Thinking Atheists?
About that religion. So we do education, but separation of church and state. We are the activist group in the area. There's some free thinker groups and some student groups, and we all coordinate together to the Dallas-Fort Worth Coalition of Reason banner and do things together, and members cross boundaries. But we are the activist group in the area.
And so how many members do you have?
We have about 750 on the meetup.
Wow.
That's good.
That's great.
Well, I'm writing that down. I wasn't expecting that number.
That's how many people are signed up on our meetup.com.
Right.
Yeah, wow.
Have you had a chance to get in touch with Barry Lynn? He is
Americans United?
yes.
Yeah.
He's a minister.
I haven't. Go ahead.
Well, he's a minister who'd be very supportive of what you're doing there.
Right. Right now we're working with FFRF. Americans United is another option. I'm actually a member of that organization. And actually there are a lot of Christians and people of other faiths out there that support a total separation of church and state.
Yeah.
Yeah, those are good allies to have.
In fact, you have a seminary there in Fort Worth called the Southwestern Baptists, and many of those professors are church-state separation believers. In fact,
So that kind of grows out of the Baptist
tradition, yeah.
denomination, I think.
Yes,
They were strong. Traditionally, they've been strong supporters of separation.
yes.
Well, Randy, I didn't hear you mention anything about what you do for children. You know, churches have all kinds of activities for children. What do you guys do?
We are participate in Camp Quest. We provide volunteers. We actually sponsor a child or two every year that otherwise couldn't afford to go. So we support children through supporting Camp Quest.
Well, here in Tennessee, there's the Camp Quest of the Smoky Mountains. Do you have a local Camp Quest, and if so, does it have a specific name?
Camp Quest, Texas. And in fact, the camp is coming up here in August. I think it's down outside of Austin this year.
Do you know, are there still spaces available? Our camp is already full.
Is it? I think we're full too. These things fill up really fast.
Yeah.
The problem with Camp Quest here that they talk about is the fact they just can't get enough volunteers or find a facility big enough or a facility even willing to take a camp.
The facilities, is it?
Meaning you've been turned down by some venues?
One year we were at an Episcopalian church camp up on Lake Texoma, and we went through with the camp there, but some of the higher-ups in the hierarchy, because the Episcopalian church is a hierarchical structure, got wind of it and kind of came back down and said, not again.
Right.
It's church politics.
Yeah, it's a lot of church politics in the Episcopal Church these days, it seems.
So I guess being ecumenical doesn't apply to non-Christian.
Right, exactly.
Randy, you said that you had to use the media to get a lot of this into the attention. Could you maybe expand on that and tell us some of what you did to get media support?
We did a press release to the local TV stations and a couple of the newspapers. I had several contacts in my database for the press from previous coverage of the Rowlett issues.
Right.
And I contacted them because we knew from past experience that if we didn't engage the media, who would in turn engage Rowlett, that they would have simply ignored us and we would have never heard anything from our request or the letter from FFRF or anything.
Yeah, that's a lesson to all of us, really. I mean, you've got to get them. Because you've been doing this since what year was it first reported? You didn't know who did it, but somebody had reported it?
2010. So
okay, so you've had a few years.
But I've always preached, no pun intended, to our group and our supporters that you in these types of movements and causes, you have to have patience and stay in their face.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So to what kind of media did you apply? Radio, television, print, all of the above? Are there any that are particularly receptive or not receptive?
All of the above. We had, out of the 4 local larger television outlets, CBS did an interview, put it on their news that night at 6 o'clock. My contacts at the Dallas Morning News, I called him in the Rowlett Lakeshore Times, and from there it kind of spread. It hit the AP, suddenly it was on the Washington Times, the paper in Abilene, and right now the Friendly Atheist has it on his website.
I think it's Friendly Atheist
Yeah.
where I saw it.
That's actually the one that popped up. I looked at that, and he had another article on you. And he also has articles on some of the efforts in Florida. Now, they've got a coordinated group going, county to county, asking for secular invocations. I think they're a little bit ahead of a lot of us in that regard.
Well, county to county or city to city?
Oh, yeah, well, now I can't remember. I have to look the article back up again, but they're calling on Floridans from all over to get these things going and to challenge the local authorities. So.
County commissions do invocations. City commissions do invocations.
Yeah. I mean, anywhere at any time and get the awareness out there. But From what I could tell, it looked like it was a much more coordinated event than some of the things that we've seen in the past.
Hey,
On our end, that is. So,
Randy,
Well, we're in the infancy of that because one of our members is going to his local suburb city
yeah.
to ask to get on the invocation list. I'm going to do it here where I live next, but right now we're focused on Rowlett to see how it goes, which could very well be some best practices that if we need them, we can apply as we move forward rather than shotgunning it. At this point, we want to get one under our belt. So that's the way we're approaching it.
That's good, yeah.
you have there in the Metroplex a very good public radio station, KERA, and they've been very sensitive to very diversity of opinions. Have you had a good chance to get on KERA?
I haven't contacted them, although we have looked into, that's the public station, right?
Yeah,
Like PBS on television.
right.
We've contacted both KERA and the public broadcasting system here and discussed getting on there and manning the phones on their fundraisers, but we haven't actually done it yet. So we're aware of those outlets, but right now there's been a cascade of
It's very likely they would be interested in
for
this.
me to comment, so I haven't had time to go past the demand that's already been placed on me for these type of things.
Right. I think it might be prudent to do our halftime break here and give us a minute to reorganize. Sam, do you think you could roll that for us?
Yeah.
And we'll get right back to the show after this.
Now, we're in a new studio today. That's why we got room for 4 of us. And not sure that all of our content's been loaded.
In fact, yeah, we may have to do it by word. We can do that. We've got it
Do you
prepared.
find stories of talking snakes laughable? Do you prefer the scientific method over supernatural beliefs?
All right.
Are you concerned about religious leaders and organizations imposing their values and rules on your body, your family, and the rest of our society? Well, take comfort in the fact that you're not alone. The Rationalists of East Tennessee meets weekly for fellowship and provides a forum for people who support skeptical thinking and rational discussion of these and other issues. To find out more information or to find out about our next meeting, visit us on the web at www.rationalist.org. If you live in or around the Knoxville area and are questioning your religious beliefs or simply believe in one less God than everyone else, well, you're not alone. The Atheist Society of Knoxville is a fun and friendly group of people just like you that meets twice a week at a bar or restaurant. We meet every Tuesday night following the show at Barley's Tap Room and Pizzeria for happy hour. You'll find our group either inside or on the patio. Look for Richard Dawkins' silver-jacketed book, The God Delusion, standing upright on the table. On Fridays, we meet at Agave Azul or the Beard and Beer Market. But if you plan to preach, proselytize, provoke, or punch, please don't. We all question what we believe at one point in our lives. If this is the time for you, come join us for food, drink, conversation, and fun.
All right, and we're back. This is Freethought Forum, a program by the Atheist Society of Knoxville and the Rationalists of East Tennessee. We're in a different studio today. We aren't able to take calls, but we will be trying to check Facebook.
That Facebook group is Freethought Forum Knoxville. It's an open group.
All right. And I guess we had the mid-program break, and we should mention the book club activity. I think we've got a book club coming up in July, on July 13, is The Story of the Human Body, Evolution, Health, and Disease by Daniel Lieberman. The public is invited to participate. You need not have read the book to attend, but of course it helps. As usual, the time is 4 p.m. on Sunday, and that'll be July 13. We meet in the Barnes & Noble bookstore at 8029 Kingston Pike. Hope to see you there.
Yeah. And both the Atheist Society of Knoxville and the Rationalists of East Tennessee help provide a social outlet where you'll find that if you don't believe in God,
You're
you are
not alone.
Okay, well, let's get back to Randy here. And you said you had a couple soapboxes, Randy. Could you tell us a few of your favorites?
Well, this is more my personal opinion than representing Metroplex Atheists, but talking about tradition, which the supporters of public or government-sponsored prayers, so to speak, base that on the fact that it's a tradition from the beginning of this country. Well, I look at that like from two angles. Number one, yes, it's been a tradition, but that doesn't mean it's right. I mean, tradition at one time supported slavery and women not having the right to vote, but we figured out those didn't fit the society as it grew, and we got rid of them and figured out they were wrong. Same thing with government prayer. The society we live in now is much more diverse as far as non-Christians and non-believers than it ever has been, and we need to adjust the policy accordingly and try to shut down this what amounts to Christian bullying.
Yeah, I don't know if you saw the Hobby Lobby page that they published on July 4th with quotes from some of our founding fathers. Did you have a chance to see that in the newspaper, Randy?
I did see that. They do a whole page. I think they do that every year.
Yeah, I know they did it at least last year because we did a whole program on that.
I think FFRF counters that with their own ad. But.
Yeah, they did last year. I didn't see one this year. But in any case, one thing that always bothers me about those quotes is they're talking about people who were living in the latter part of the 18th century there, who knew very little about science and who probably had no other recourse but to believe in some kind of a supernatural God for a lot of things that they observed in nature. And to go back and say, well, because these guys said this 250 years ago, that we have to stick with exactly what they thought now seems to me to be ridiculous.
Yeah, and many of those founding fathers were deists, not supernaturalists. They did not hold to miracles. They did not believe Jesus was the Son of God. In other words, they were very skeptical of a lot of so-called Christian views. And so just to quote the founding father doesn't support any particular religion because they were all over the map.
Right, and in the same vein, the institutions maybe they accepted or were founded then, we don't necessarily have to continue them ad infinitum, you know. Right. We do learn things, we do mature, I hope.
In fact, all religions that survive have had to modify. The Hebrew tradition had the Torah, and then the rabbis said the Torah is closed, and then they developed what's called the oral tradition, or the oral law, or oral Torah. In other words, they had to modify and adapt to local conditions using their tradition, but modifying to say we have to make our lives workable. All religions have had to do this in order to survive in their environment.
Well, I think it's funny we even have the conversation as if it was somehow relevant evidence of what the founders may have said and believed. You know, would we argue that, well, the Egyptian gods must be true because there was a pharaoh and a government that believed in them?
Yeah.
You know, the truth value of the claims of religion are independent of who's making the claims. You know,
exactly.
Right, but you always have to invoke somebody to give it some sort of stature in the society, right? And so these people who we call the founding fathers, I won't say they're revered, but they're looked up to very strongly by most people in the society. Well, but I agree with you that it doesn't matter what they
it has no bearing on the truth value of the claim.
No.
Well, anytime we have something written down into our law, anytime we have records such as invocation to the past, we have a way for people to insert dogmatism. Just
dogmatism.
Can I create a word? I can make that an ism, right?
Yeah.
Yes. I can make anything an ism. That's what we're doing. So,
go ahead.
All right. I create words whenever I want.
No, that's a good word.
So,
go ahead.
You and Sarah.
That's Moon Canada too. But they do dogmatism.
Yes. But I want to get back to what we were about to bring up right before we did our break, which, Randy, we were talking about some of the I want to call them crazy ideas that local council had, and I'm looking now at the invocation policy in that area, in your area, And let me read briefly some of this terrible bureaucratic language. The council, or whereas the council is not bound by the decisions of the Fourth Circuit, but hereby acknowledges the general guidance provided by the most important of that court's findings in Simpson, including the facts about the policy there, and then I'm going to skip down slightly, established a practice of compiling a list of monotheistic congregations with addresses taken primarily from the phone book, whereto the county clerk would send an invitation each December addressed to the religious leader of each congregation. So that's part of the protocol in their local, to find these invocations. Now, I actually hadn't read this entire thing, and we were talking about the Greece versus Galloway, which is one I did look into, and they had a similar thing written in, like bit written into their.
When you say they mean in Greece.
Yeah, Greece versus Galloway. Yeah,
They used the phone book.
The phone book
to establish a calling list.
But I don't recall that they were so narrow as to go to local monotheistic congregations. So this would still be. This is the current practice, right? That's what's written in.
And that excludes the Buddhist immediately.
Yeah. Do they ever have a devil worship?
Yeah. So I would.
Now, are devil worshippers monotheists, Ralph?
Well, some
I
are.
would guess.
I don't think many devil worshippers know, but we're not judging. We're just allowing everyone to, this is what the freedom of religion means. But Randy, I think picking on that monotheistic segment is an easy win there. I mean, that clearly has to be updated.
But what if you had...
Well, sure, that's exclusionary and discriminatory and probably flies in the face of what a couple of us have read in the majority decision on the Greece versus Galloway case.
Yeah.
And as well as, if someone can prove to me that 1 = 3 and 3 = 1, I will accept the fact that Christianity is monotheistic. Until then, I say it's triumvirate.
Let me tell you, if we could we have a local caller, Pastor Al, and boy, if we could get him on the line now, we could have that 1 = 3 conversation and have a lot of fun. But we will not do that.
Very interesting person. Very interesting, yeah.
But the point is it's exclusive. I mean, it's
exclusionary.
Exclusionary, but yeah.
Yeah, it is. It is.
So
it is, and it flies right in the face of the First Amendment.
I'll take any progress we can get.
For sure.
Yeah, and I think
what's interesting is even Christianity, which claims to be monotheistic, because they borrowed that from the Hebrew tradition, but they put in there what's called, in the beginning was the Word, but in the Greek that's Sophia. And that's a Greek goddess.
It's a Greek goddess of knowledge, right?
Of wisdom.
Yeah.
Well, most of the Old Testament and a lot of the New Testament is borrowed from older religions anyway. So.
Oh, yeah. There's a lot of polytheism in the Hebrew Bible. And I think the Trinitarian view had to struggle with that for centuries. And they're still struggling with it.
Well, I don't understand it. I have never understood it. The Trinity.
Well, you guys know what the Trinity is, don't you?
Randy, you tell us what you think it is, and we'll probably argue it here as well.
I say it's the power, the money, and the control.
Yeah, it certainly has something to do with it. That's right.
I wasn't expecting that response.
Yeah, that's not exactly what they would say.
Yeah.
Father, the Son, and the Holy Spirit.
Yeah.
So I attended a lecture on ancient Egyptian religious practices, and they made an interesting analogy that in ancient Egypt there was a dominant, let's call it a cult. And here I'm using cult in the sense that means a group of people who believe a common thing. And that would be the cult of Osiris. Osiris was the lord of the afterlife, and Isis was the mother of their son Horus, and Horus was the king here on earth. So we have the kingdom of earth with the son, and the father was the lord of the afterlife. And you can lay that right over Christianity.
Yeah, it comes right out of the Egyptian tradition.
Cult of Isis persisted even into the first and second centuries BC.
Yeah, because you had the Hellenistic world, the Greeks and the Romans, which basically is polytheistic. And then Israel was a fairly small country. And so they had to, first of all, in Israel, they had to learn Greek. And then they started learning Greek ideas, and that's when their monotheism was modified significantly. and it continued to that for centuries. And when Christianity took over, it's not monotheism anymore.
Yeah. Hey, Randy, let me ask you, have you gotten a lot of backlash from your efforts in the local newspapers, people writing letters to the editor, et cetera?
I haven't seen any of the letters to the editor, and I haven't seen any printed, and I read the Fort Worth paper, not the Dallas paper.
Uh-huh.
There's several blogs that, like the Dallas Observer, did a pretty good, accurate, detailed article, and some of the comments on it, most of them were actually positive. I haven't run across too much negativity from the public that I've seen yet. Not to say it's not out there somewhere.
That's still good news. I mean, when we hear things around here, and I jump on the blogs, you can see just about anything. And actually, around here, it's pretty bad. And you'll what I've noticed is you'll see from people who sound particularly liberal, progressive, they'll still say, hey, let these people pray and all this other such, even if it's a government endorsement like UT prayer before a football game. And you get, but it doesn't stop there. Then it gets hateful. Then it gets more like, you don't like it, get out. That's what I hear more than anything.
Yeah, if you, we have a newspaper here that is fairly generous in publishing letters from the local residents who write in. And then they have a comment section you can go to on the internet, on their website. And it's just what John says there, There will be some people who are kind of rational, but then there are others who are just off the wall.
I think we do have a very receptive
like
media
that.
there. They'll print it. If you send it in, they'll print it. They've pretty much said. So that's the good news.
Unless it's, foul.
Oh,
or
yeah.
something like that.
But they're receptive. They want it in there, so... That's good that the media's there. So,
well, Randy, I read an article in the Dallas Observer. I'm guessing it's the one to which you're referring, but I thought the headline didn't seem to be explained well, or else I missed it. But the headline said, in part, "Mayor says no spaghetti god." And that made me wonder. So for the benefit of our viewers who might not know what a spaghetti god reference is, Randy, could you expound on that, or else we'll get someone here too?
Well, I don't know if he's acknowledging the spaghetti god in that statement, but the flying spaghetti. When I was asked about that by the Observer,
spaghetti monster.
I said, well, he's referring to the flying spaghetti monster, which is within the atheist or non-believing community is a spoof on deities. But I said, we've never brought that up. And we've said all along we're going to do a serious secular invocation. And I think probably, and I told the Observer this, I don't think that's right, at this point in the progress of events and statements and press articles, I think that the mayor was actually grasping and getting a little desperate on what to say, because he was starting to get backed into a corner. This is right before they put it on their agenda and telling us we had misinterpreted the Greece versus Galloway case. So I think once he started getting accurate input on that case that he knew, and with their current policy, I think he started realizing that he was getting pushed into a corner, and that was a panic statement. That's what I think.
So, in a sense, it's a straw man argument, because you guys didn't ask to do a spaghetti monster invocation.
It's a caricature.
No, we didn't ask to do a spaghetti monster invocation. Although I think we could have some fun with that.
Yeah, right.
It'll be coming.
That Festivus thing was hilarious this past year. And
where was the Festivus, John, for the viewers?
No, I don't...
I believe it was in Florida.
Yeah.
Probably it was in a county building. There was a nativity, and a resident said, I would like to erect a Festivus pole, and it was made out of...
Pabst Blue Ribbon cans, right?
Yeah.
So I guess I have to say, I mean, we know that is... I think it's an effective way to show the standards that we have.
That's what I call the teenage period of atheism.
Well, yeah, but
just need to get over it and get on with it.
Well, I think there's a place and time for each one of these types of things, like doing a spoof and whatnot. So we risk not being taken seriously anytime we use that. We know that.
Yeah.
We're not stupid. But it is kind of fun, and sometimes you do need satire.
Well, yeah, a certain amount of ridicule points up problems. You don't want to overdo it, though.
And so,
I mean, the flying spaghetti monster as just kind of took off suddenly.
It's a great idea. It's great to see on the backs of cars.
The best
bumper
way to
stickers.
criticize some view you don't agree with is to get inside the system, inside it. That means you have to learn it and then point out the contradictions within it. That's how most of us change our own views.
Well, right, but we might need a different tool every now and then to get the job done.
That sounds
And
like a creationist subterfuge.
here's what we need, Randy. We need someone to challenge that mayor and say, you do not know that the flying spaghetti monster doesn't exist. You can't prove it. And then they need to be slightly fundamentalist with it and go, and so therefore he exists. They need to then make another logical fallacy and show how silly these types of conversations are, really.
That's a good point.
And so,
I'd love to do that, but he won't talk to us. So.
right.
Yeah.
Well,
Probably
Forrest and I
not,
were
so.
talking about, I think because of our activity on the show, I mean, we need someone from the population here. Someone from our friends and family need to get in there, and they need to fill the role. They need to be a real Pastafarian and take it the whole way. And
well, this is
Well, I don't think.
no, you don't think
well, this is
so?
precisely why you had a Bill of Rights
Well, right.
to defend minorities.
Yeah.
It is democracy is not majority rules. That's another form of tyranny.
Yeah.
It is
Right.
to have certain rights that are guaranteed, even against the tyranny of the majority.
So that's a
all
good
of the
point.
majority and the minority have the rights.
So in the past, and not in the young stages of our country, but just in the recent past, areas have been very religious. They've basically been in a glass bubble. Like this area you're at, glass bubble. Some of these areas in Florida where I'm reading, you look at their local laws, and they've erected this system. They look like they're genuinely trying to include some faiths. If I were to even look at your invocation protocol in that area, it says later on trying to be inclusive of all faiths, and it goes back to court decisions I haven't read, but no doubt they were trying to figure out, hey, there's lots of Judeo-Christian type prayers here. Let's be more inclusive, and so they established systems. So I think some of them really did want to help.
Yeah.
But it didn't turn out that way. They live in a glass bubble, and you've got to penetrate it. And if it takes the flying spaghetti monster to penetrate
Well,
it,
okay. So, Randy, what do you think secular invocation should consist of? That is, what should be the main thrust of it?
Well, if it's not going to be a tribute to the flying spaghetti monster, and we intend on doing a serious secular invocation, it would be an appeal to or invoking human qualities of logic, reason, sense of justice, and keep those on the forefront of your thinking tonight while you make decisions, the right decisions for the community and citizens. That's a quick summary, sort of from there you can expand on that.
that's excellent. Yeah.
So let me play Jehovah's advocate here for a moment and say, well, you can only get justice from Jehovah. How would you counter that assertion? That without Jehovah knowing, there would be no.
What?
That without the Judeo-Christian God, Jehovah, Yahweh, that there could be no justice. That's the source of justice.
Well, okay,
Well,
Randy.
I would
Yeah.
go
ahead,
back
Randy.
to the roots of my atheism and say, well, before I'm going to answer that, prove to me there's a Jehovah.
Right.
And then I'll take the easy way out and say, well, prove to me there isn't. And
Yeah.
I'll say, I'm not the least thing. I'll give you my answer to that.
You
It's
could
totally
take the-
irrelevant to me. I could care less about proving there's not a God. I'm
Well-
not going to believe there is one until you can prove it to me. In other words, you're making the claim, you prove it.
Well, if you get into politics, if you just take the history of religions trying to outmaneuver each other through politics, using murder as a way to do it, and that's the history in Europe. And it's also the history in the Middle East, using murder to establish your religion, using the government sometimes to practice murder.
so if I'm going to take the Christian American role here, I'd say, oh, well, but it got all better in America because we got this great Constitution that God gave us.
Separation
All right,
of church and state.
we slightly moved away from Ralph's question, which I thought was really good.
Oh, yeah.
What do we put in an invocation? And Randy, your response was something that really wasn't aggressive. It was simply, how do we, it was guidelines, not even guidelines. It was like something nice to think about to get things started and to.
Logic, justice,
oh, you wrote it
justice.
down there. Yeah, logic, justice.
Well,
But-
it's just that even the Christian prayer givers or the city councils will maintain that the reason they do this prayer is to solemnize the occasion. So we would go in with the intent of solemnizing the occasion by doing a serious secular invocation
Right.
to set the tone for the council meeting.
Yeah, that's I think that's excellent because I think some of our thinking, some of the risk when we address these issues, kind of like what Forrest brought up, was we might want to throw a history lesson into the middle of one of these invocations, and I'm mostly against that. I liked what you mentioned. However, I was kind of wondering if that failed, would then it be necessary to assert ourselves a little more aggressively? But I still like what you were talking about with the invocation myself. But
Do you have the text for the Florida invocation?
yeah, I do have the Florida invocation here. So
Well,
or
I'm
go ahead.
actually signed up with and so is one of our residents in Rowlett, with the American Humanist online
Right.
certified invocation list. And there's some sample invocations there, and I've saved some over the last 2 or 3 years, because when I saw this coming, when the Greece case was filed a year and a half ago, and we knew we couldn't get anywhere here locally until that case was resolved,
Right.
we did things like putting in a post office box and establishing our presence in Rowlett to make sure we were an established organization there.
Right.
And have regular meetings
Right. I
and an
think
internet presence and so forth.
the humanist sources are probably a good place to start
you're
for
right.
something like this.
They've been doing it a while.
Because
They know
they've
what
been
they're
doing it a while, and they know how to present it succinctly,
Well, I would like to ask John if he would solemnize our television show vicariously from Florida here by reading. Where was this one read?
Okay, so this is Groveland, Florida, and this is I'm going to butcher this gentleman's name, Paul. Do you have any clue?
Oh, no.
Yeah, I'm just going to call him Paul Hayden, but it's T.J. Aiden. I don't know how that, if it's an S or if it's an H, I don't know how to pronounce that, but he kind of goes along with what you were talking about there, and he does add in this slight. It's not a punch, it's not aggressive, but he makes an argument in the invocation. And so I'm against this as an initial way to go, but he brings up the history, which, 50 years ago you would have had just your family, your friends, your coworkers, people you grew up with here, and you wouldn't have to worry about excluding people. I'm not 100% sure of that. I think you'd still exclude some people, but nowadays, as you've noted, and as we've noted, you've got activists, you've got people who've moved in from other areas trying to get to jobs. We've just got a great deal of diversity here, and if you've got an old boys club in a city council, then you're excluding people no matter what. And then he adds, in the middle of this, he mentions, we have citizens who are Christian, Jewish, Hindu, Muslim, Buddhist, Wiccan, and people who profess no religious belief at all. I believe that any prayer in this diverse setting would cause at least some of our citizens to feel like outsiders, that they had entered a place where their requests or problems might be considered with suspicion or indifference because their beliefs differed from the majority. I thought this was a good way to make the argument in the middle of an invocation without being aggressive. It's just raising awareness. But it does shy away from what an invocation is under the guidelines you were talking about earlier, Randy. I think we're going to solemnize this. Is that something we should mention in an invocation, do you think?
Well, I think that what you just read is very viable. And somewhere between what I described and what you just read could be a long-term or a short-term strategy to, in not so subtle of a sense, but work your way into trying to logically impart a message that, the underlying message would be you need to do away with these invocations entirely.
Right.
So
Go ahead, Joe.
what did you think of Ralph's view of learning more from the humanist approach, finding what's common among human beings and what bonds us together, and emphasizing this as a way of solemnizing a meeting?
Yeah, emphasizing humanity rather than the deity for your morals.
All the values of the humanist
Right.
tradition.
Well, we're certainly not going to invoke any deity, including the spaghetti god, or anything supernatural, whatever we do.
Right.
Well, I would tend to want to invoke the memory of some of what our founders thought were important. And it's Thomas Jefferson, Benjamin Franklin, and maybe John Jay, who came up with the slogan that's been on our money for a lot longer than Under God We Trust, and that is E Pluribus Unum, which means, it's Latin, and I guess it would be something like out of many, one. And
That's right.
the very name of our nation is the United States. The point being that our future is bound up with that of our fellow citizens,
Yeah.
and that when we are legislating, we're legislating for all, and we must take care that we don't step on our fellow citizens. I think the point of the First Amendment, one of the amendments, has the right to petition the government against grievances, and that means that when the majority makes rules, we have a right to at least squeak and say, "Hey, you're stepping on me.
Yeah.
Please stop." And we have the expectation that well-intentioned people will say, "Oh my goodness, we're sorry. We didn't realize we were doing that to you." That's how government should work.
Well, we're coming up. We're in the last few minutes of the show, Randy. Just want to give you a
Okay,
heads
go.
up there.
So, meaning we could let Randy talk. You got about a minute and a half if you got anything closing to say, and then we'll go into our closing routine.
Yeah.
Oh, I just want to thank you guys for letting me participate in the show. I really enjoyed it. I picked up some ideas during the discussion, and we may slightly change or alter our invocation approach based on that. But we've got to wait to see if we're even going to get an opportunity to do that.
Right. Well, we get the word out there, for your cause, for our cause, and really, to protect everyone.
And I think this is very good to have Randy on for our show in Knoxville. It gives these people some view that there's are other parts of the country, not just
Exactly.
the East Tennessee.
And Randy, we hope that when you do your invocation, you'll remember to let us know, and that someone will have made a recording of it that we can share with our viewers.
Yeah, we'd like to
Yeah,
have you on
we'd
the
like-
show again
we'd like
as
to have
we
a
follow
copy.
up on this, right?
Yeah, I'd like to have a copy of it and see how things go. If you get a chance to present it, I think that would be great. We could read it and
Well, I'll
talk a
keep
little
you
bit.
informed on how the progress goes, and if we're able to even to get approved. If not, I'll still let you know, because hopefully we'll have FFRF legal on our side, because the lawyer there said we will be seeing lawsuits probably
Yeah.
related to this Grease Galloway on the discrimination on who gets to give invocations.
Right, and so we can, we'll be following that on the FFRF website as well as their publications. So I thank you very much for your being here, and I think we're all very appreciative. We'll hope to be talking to you again.
All right?
Thank you.
We need to do the closing. Joe.
Well, it's time to start wrapping things up. Go get your pen, if you would, and paper. This has been a Freethought Forum, or a program by the Atheist Society of Knoxville and the Rationalists of East Tennessee.
Okay, and please send us feedback. Leave voicemail at 865-272-9060 or email us at freethoughtforum@yahoo.com.
Grab this one. You can see the show on Tuesdays from 5 to 6 p.m. Eastern Time on this Knoxville station, and at 2100 Greenwich Mean Time on ctvknox.org.
I'd like to thank our viewers. Special thanks to Sam and Jonas for technical support, and the staff at CTV Knox, and to all of our callers, and most especially to Randy Word for calling in and